Capture of Riah oil tanker, 2019. In the summer of 2019, as tensions in the Persian Gulf reached a boiling point, Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, executed a daring maritime operation that captured global attention and further escalated the region's volatile situation. On July 14, 2019, the IRGC seized the MT Riah, a small oil tanker sailing under the Panamanian flag, accusing it of smuggling fuel in Iranian waters. The capture of the Riah was not an isolated incident. It was part of a broader strategy by the IRGC to assert control over the Strait of Hormuz, retaliate against Western sanctions, and send an unambiguous message to the United States and its allies that Iran was prepared to escalate the conflict. For the IRGC, the capture of the Riah was not just about intercepting a vessel. It was a carefully calculated maneuver in Iran's strategy of asymmetric warfare aimed at reshaping the balance of power in the Gulf. The seizure of the Riah occurred against the backdrop of a growing confrontation between Iran and the United States. Following the Trump administration's withdrawal from the Iran nuclear deal in 2018 and the reimposition of crippling sanctions, Iran's economy was pushed to the brink. Oil exports, the lifeblood of the Iranian economy, plummeted as U.S. sanctions targeted Iran's energy sector, cutting off Tehran's access to global markets. Faced with mounting economic pressure and growing internal unrest, Iran adopted a strategy of maximum resistance, relying on the IRGC to execute a series of asymmetric operations designed to disrupt global oil supplies and demonstrate Iran's ability to retaliate. By mid-2019, the Persian Gulf had become a flashpoint of escalating tensions. The IRGC had already been implicated in a series of mysterious mine attacks on commercial oil tankers and the downing of a U.S. surveillance drone over the Strait of Hormuz. But as the U.S. and its allies tightened the noose on Iran's economy, Tehran was determined to push back. The IRGC, tasked with defending Iran's maritime interests and projecting power in the region, was ready to escalate the conflict to a new level. The Riah, a relatively small oil tanker with a capacity of 2,000 tons, had been operating in the waters near the Strait of Hormuz, a critical choke point through which nearly 20% of the world's oil passes. According to Iranian authorities, the vessel was suspected of smuggling fuel out of Iran, a practice that had become increasingly common as Iran sought to evade U.S. sanctions by engaging in clandestine oil exports. The IRGC, always vigilant in protecting Iran's economic interests, claimed that the Riah was smuggling 1 million liters of fuel and had violated Iranian maritime regulations. On the night of July 14, 2019, the IRGC Navy sprang into action. Using fast attack boats and advanced maritime surveillance technology, the IRGC intercepted the Riah as it transited through the Strait of Hormuz. Within minutes, IRGC commandos boarded the vessel and took control of the ship. The crew, consisting of Indian, Pakistani, and Ukrainian nationals, was taken into custody, and the vessel was escorted to the port of Bandar Abbas, where it was impounded by Iranian authorities. The IRGC's capture of the Riah was a textbook example of Iran's asymmetric naval strategy, using speed, stealth, and surprise to seize control of a vessel without triggering a broader conflict. The operation was carried out with surgical precision, underscoring the IRGC's ability to project power in the Persian Gulf and enforce Iran's maritime sovereignty with impunity. While Iran claimed that the Riah was involved in fuel smuggling, the capture of the vessel was widely seen as a calculated act of retaliation against the seizure of the Iranian oil tanker Grace 1 by British authorities off the coast of Gibraltar just days earlier. The Grace 1 had been accused of transporting Iranian oil to Syria in violation of EU sanctions, and its capture was viewed by Tehran as an act of economic warfare orchestrated by Washington and its European allies. The IRGC's seizure of the Riah was a tit-for-tat response, designed to signal that Iran would not allow its vessels to be detained without consequences. The timing of the Riah's capture was no coincidence. It came just days after Iranian President Hassan Rouhani warned that if Iran was not allowed to export its oil, it would take retaliatory measures to disrupt global energy supplies. The IRGC, ever eager to demonstrate its loyalty to the regime and its readiness to confront Western powers, acted swiftly to translate Rouhani's threats into action. By seizing the Riah, the IRGC sent a clear message that Iran was willing to escalate tensions in the Strait of Hormuz and challenge U.S. and allied dominance in the region. The capture of the Riah had immediate repercussions. Global oil prices surged as fears of further escalation gripped the markets, and maritime insurers raised premiums for vessels operating in the Persian Gulf. The incident also heightened concerns among Gulf states, particularly Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, who viewed Iran's aggressive posture in the Strait of Hormuz as a direct threat to their economic and security interests. For the United States, the seizure of the Riah was a stark reminder of the limitations of its maximum pressure campaign. While sanctions had crippled Iran's economy, they had not broken Tehran's resolve. Instead, Iran had doubled down on its strategy of asymmetric warfare, using the IRGC to demonstrate that it could inflict economic pain on its adversaries by disrupting global oil supplies and destabilizing the region. But the IRGC's capture of the Riah was not without risks. While the incident showcased Iran's ability to project power and enforce its maritime claims, it also pushed the region closer to the brink of open conflict. The Trump administration, already on high alert after previous Iranian provocations, responded by deploying additional U.S. military assets to the region and increasing surveillance of Iranian naval activities. The situation remained dangerously close to spiraling into a full-scale confrontation, with both sides locked in a high-stakes game of brinkmanship. The Riah was eventually released after weeks of diplomatic maneuvering and quiet negotiations, but the damage had already been done. The IRGC had demonstrated that it could seize vessels in the Persian Gulf with impunity, turning the Strait of Hormuz into a flashpoint where global energy security could be threatened at any moment. The capture of the Riah reinforced Iran's reputation as a formidable and unpredictable player in the region, capable of using asymmetric tactics to advance its strategic objectives and challenge the dominance of the United States and its Gulf allies. For the IRGC, the operation was not just about seizing a vessel. It was a calculated maneuver to reshape the strategic dynamics of the Persian Gulf, signal Iran's defiance in the face of U.S. sanctions, and remind the world that Iran's reach extended far beyond its borders. Through its bold and audacious capture of the Riah, the IRGC had once again demonstrated that in the unforgiving waters of the Strait of Hormuz, Iran's influence was unyielding, its tactics were unpredictable, and its ability to shape the course of global events was unparalleled.